Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum. In today's video, I'll be making an argument for the beginning of the universe, which comes in really handy in Kalam Cosmological argument. This argument is from the impossibility of traversing an actual infinite. What does traversing mean? Firstly, it basically means going through a sequence. Like traversing a week would be going through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like going through each day, going from one sequence, completing a sequence, that would be basically called traversing, right? This is about traversing, impossibility of traversing an actual infinite, how an actual infinite number of actual infinite sequence cannot be traversed. What is my argument here? There will be two premises and a conclusion. Premise 1: if the universe is past eternal, that means an infinite series of past events has to be traversed for this particular moment to happen. Premise 2: an infinite series of past events cannot be traversed. Conclusion: the universe cannot be past eternal, hence it has a beginning. Now, basically, this argument I am showing that the universe has this property, that it has an infinite series of past events being traversed. That is impossible. An eternal universe has that. So that is impossible. So universe cannot be past eternal. It has to have a beginning. Premise 1: how do we know? Basically, premise 1 is true, that how do we know the universe eternal past involves traversing of an actual infinite? Okay, here's a very simple way we can know this. uh, each day, right, the events in each day, we can see clearly that they are affected by, caused by, or causally affected by the events that happened yesterday. This is actually very simple to understand. Let's say yesterday you get $100. Today you will have $100, right? Unless you lose it. But the event that happened yesterday affects the event that happened today. Yesterday, if you got shot, you will feel the wound, feel the pain from being shot today. Events that happened yesterday affect events that happened today. There is a causal chain, right? Now let's suppose this is something everyone should agree to. There is no issue with this. Let's suppose the universe is eternal, right? What would be the case? The events that happened today are affected by the events that happened yesterday. Those are affected by the day before that. Those are affected by the day before that. Add on and on, ad infinitum. Right? This is what would be happening for each set of events of each day. Now, this basically shows that there is an infinite series, right? Infinite series of events that have happened in an eternal past before day. The events of each day are basically in an infinite series. So at least the premise 1 should be proven, that if the universe is past eternal, that means an infinite series of past events has to be traversed for today, this moment to happen, right? The causal sequence has to be traversed, because for, let's suppose I was getting $100 today, right? I suppose I have $100 today. Yesterday or day before that, I would have to get those $100 to have those today, right? A causal series has to be traversed for me to have $100 today, right? So I don't think there is any issue with this. Anyone can accept. Everyone should accept this. Now, this is something that will come up later. I just want to do this now to make it easy for me later. Think about this. What I've basically drawn here is a very crude version of a number line, because I don't know how to get one of those fancy ones here, right? Imagine this is basically a number line. One end is negative infinity to middle is 0, right end is positive infinity, right? Now for today, the events that are happening today, we can basically place them at 0 on this number line. We can place the events that happened yesterday on -1, the day before that on -2, and order on and on ad infinitum. To every day that has ever been, we can place it on a number line, right? The events in it on a number line. Now, each of those past events has to happen for today to happen. Today is the end point of that sequence, right? There's an infinite number of days before today. The events of each of those days is related in a causal chain, and the end point is today at 0. Just keep this in mind. Premise 2 is basically that the infinite cannot be traversed. Now, before going on further, I think here is something everyone can and should agree to. Let's say we are on a number line. We start at point 0, right? And we move towards positive infinity. Will we ever reach positive infinity? No. Why? Because we can reach 1, 2, 10, 1,000, 100,000, million, trillion, billion, quadrillion. Will we ever reach positive infinity? No, that will never happen. Why? Because any number we will reach, there will always be an infinite number of greater numbers ahead of it. So this particular thing, reaching positive infinity, this will never happen. The distance between 0 and positive infinite, this can never ever be traversed. Everyone should agree to this. And there is no reason not to. Because there is no way around this. Now, till now I've proven two things, right? Three things. One, universe eternal past involves a traversal of an infinite series. Two, that we can place that eternal past, the events in that eternal past, on a number line from negative infinity to 0. 3, we can't get from 0 to positive infinity. That distance cannot be traversed. Right? Now, in the case of an eternal past, think about this. I've already shown that we can place each day on a number line. What basically happens? That causal chain from infinite past to today is traversed, right? In that causal chain, initially we are at negative infinity. Our final position is 0. So our final is 0, our initial position is negative infinity, right? And this is basically what would be happening in traversing an infinite causal chain. Now, our initial position is negative infinity. It's not a starting point, but initially we are at negative infinity. Our end point is 0. The amount traversed, the distance traveled, the change is final minus initial, right? Which is final is 0, initial is negative infinity. 0 minus negative infinity is positive infinity, which we saw earlier cannot be traversed, right? We can't get from 0 to positive infinity. Yet if we are to arrive from a from an eternal past to this moment, right, that would involve basically being able to go from 0 to positive infinity, being able to traverse 0 to positive infinity. That distance would need to be traversed for us to arrive from an infinite past to this moment. This simply cannot happen. Hence universe cannot be past eternal, and hence it has to have a beginning. I think this is the most clear-cut way to demonstrate this argument, and I don't think there's any way around this, because how can anyone challenge this point? This is simple math, right? There is nothing complicated about this. Now, I'll get to two contentions that are made against this argument. First contention is this argument assumes there is a starting point. No, this argument does not assume there is a starting point. If I was assuming, or if people making this argument was assuming there was a starting point, right, then basically starting point will be some specific point and end point would be 0. That's a finite distance. Traversing that is not an issue. Because there is an infinity here, there is an issue. That's the problem. And the point of the argument is not to show that basically there is a starting point or not, right? The argument is about whether an infinite distance can be traversed or not. And that point doesn't require a starting point. You can have an infinite past, right? But even to get from an infinite past to this moment, just an end point, you would have to require a traverse an actual infinite, which cannot happen, which is the same basically as going from 0 to positive infinity. That can't happen either, and this shows that. Secondly, some people can claim here that I'm just assuming that because you can't go from 0 to positive infinity, that means you can't go from negative infinity to 0. No, because I'm showing 0 minus negative infinity is positive infinity, I am showing that arriving from negative infinity to 0 entails traveling a positive infinity, because the traversal going from a sequence, right, traversing a sequence, going through a sequence, it's about the distance. It's not about starting or ending point, it's just about the distance, and that distance simply cannot be traversed. Now uh, these are the basically two contentions that are made against this argument. But some people will try to do basically, I just go through. I think I've addressed the first contention. I want to go through the second one, although I've addressed it a bit. That just because there is a starting point, right? That does not mean a negative beginningless series cannot be traversed. Just because we can't grow from 0 to positive infinity, that does not mean we can't go from negative infinity to 0, right? Firstly, understand this point. There is nothing mysterious going out here. There is nothing unusual about it that we can't imagine here. We we have an idea of what is happening here. There is no appeal to magic or mystery that will work here. This is a very simple point. We know how an eternal past would be, right? There will be an infinite number of days. We can put those on a number line, and this would basically involve arriving from negative infinity to 0. This is what it will involve, which is the same as, which is because traversal is only about distance, right, or the sequence. That sequence is the same as arriving from 0 to positive infinity. This cannot happen. If this cannot happen, right, and arriving from negative infinity to 0 entails this, then arriving from negative infinity to 0 cannot happen either. In conclusion, I think this is a very strong and powerful argument for beginning of the universe, and I don't see there is any way around that other than some kind of appeal to mystery, or basically saying it can happen, and maybe it can happen. I've seen atheists say this, right? But that is the same as them saying maybe something can come from nothing. It is irrational in that case, it is irrational in this case, and there is no way around this evidence, this argument. This is a very strong proof. In fact, this argument will apply for every single case of traversal of an actual infinite. This is not something that it can be true in one or two examples, it can't be true in one or two others. No one can make this claim for a very simple reason. Any kind of traversal we can put on a number line. Any kind of a infinite traversal from basically from a beginningless series, we can place each bit of part of the sequence on a number line, and the same problems will apply there all over again. So I don't see how there is any way around this argument, and it seems even atheist philosophers are challenging this on nothing but blind faith. Inshallah, I hope you have enjoyed this video. I've tried to make a very strong argument. I think I have made a very strong argument for the beginning of the universe, and I've tried to address the contentions as well. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum.